Welcome everyone to the battle between world number 1 Magnus Carlsen as he takes on Hikaru Nakamura at the Paris leg of freestyle chess. There you see Hikaru coming in. They call it the El Clasico, or would I say the El Chessico, between these two of the best chess players in the world of chess, and they are taking on each other in rapid play. We have 10 minutes plus 5 seconds increment freestyle chess. Hikaru has the white pieces, he's adjusting all his pawns. The game begins and he starts off with 1 e4 and Magnus responds with d5. You can see Hikaru's bishop has opened up. The queen of Magnus comes out. The bishop has been opened up. It seems like black is already doing quite well in the opening. Hikaru pushes his pawn forward. A risky move because you're spending 2 tempi in trying to gain space. But if black can successfully hit there, yes he does, f6 on the board, and Hikaru is a little bit disturbed there. He's like, what? Who's making this noise? f6. He pushes his pawn to d4, supports the center. Pawn to g5 by Magnus, a very ambitious move. One must say he's stopping white from expanding with f4. Pawn takes place, and now black recaptures, pawn takes pawn. So you can see that already black has more space in the position, but more space does not always mean good. It also means that there are some weaknesses created, like the f5 square here. Knight comes out to g3, attacking the square on f5, and the bishop comes up to d6, trying to put pressure here. And now knight to e2 played. He's brought his knight into the game, and Magnus brings his queen, trying to cover the f5 square. Rook f1, he's angling for the f4 break. You can see the game is revolving around the f5 square. Knight goes to b6, maybe slightly in the wrong direction, because if the pawns go to b3 and a4, already the knight is a bit misplaced there, and you can see Hikaru pushing his pawn to b3. Bishop a3, Magnus stopping the advance of the a pawn, also stopping the king is now kind of trapped there, so is the rook. So very interesting move here by Magnus Carlsen. Bishop c3, Hikaru is like, I'm going to get your bishop out from here, and Magnus starts to push his a pawn down the board. Already we can see some pressure being put, and Hikaru is not one to buckle under pressure. He pushes f4, trying to create play on the king side. a4, trying to play on the queen side here. This is getting very exciting. a4 pushed, and Hikaru takes the pawn on g5. Perhaps not the best move in the position. F takes g5, but you can feel it. The rook is active. The knight can jump in at the right time. The bishops are here. And white plays queen to d2. Maybe trying to trade the bishops here. Just hitting the pawn on g5 as well. And Magnus goes rook e8. I like this move because if you try to win this, then there's already problems with bishop d3, pawn takes d3, and spoiling the structure. So maybe first taking on g6 makes a lot of sense, and he does take it. Magnus now has a choice between the pawn and the knight. If you take with the knight, is the g5 pawn hanging? Well, if you take here, then already an attack here with queen b5, knight c4 can be very strong. So Hikaru plays bishop b4, and he's trying to trade the bishops. Takes, queen takes here, and now let's see what Magnus does. He's playing on the queen side here. He has an attack, perhaps some chances, but look at this move. It's such a beautiful move. If you take the pawn, your knight on e2 is hanging, and you're threatening h4 to win the knight on e2. Rook f2, trying to defend the knight here. And Magnus is thinking hard. He pushes his pawn to h4. Knight comes back to f1. 3 minutes 58 seconds for Hikaru. 4 minutes 46 seconds for Magnus. Magnus is clearly better here. He goes queen to e6, just improving the position. Maybe later rook a6, knight d7, rook b6, just improving those pieces on the queen side. He pushes his pawn to g3. offering a trade here. Black does have a lot of space, but we do feel these positions of both the kings is a bit weird. He comes back knight e7, nice move. Maybe the knight is coming to c6 to hit the queen and the pawn. Now Hikaru comes back queen d2. He's hitting the pawn there on g5, knight f5. Well, what's the point if I take queen e3? There's knight takes d4. Insane tactic. If you take here, check, and then you lose this rook here. Amazing play by Magnus. Long castle by Hikaru. Whoa! What a move there. Take. And does he take back with... He takes back with the c pawn. Defending here. Magnus comes back knight d6. White's king looks wide open, but somehow he's managed to hold on to the position. Hikaru chops here. Pawn takes. The pawn is very strong, but it can be blockaded with the white knight coming here. The way in which Hikaru fought back with that long castle move was just epic. It's just amazing the way he played here. And now knight e3 does make a lot of sense. He brings his knight into the game. And Magnus offers a trade of knights. Positionally, Magnus is doing really well. The material is even. The a2 pawn is a bit weak. He has a passer here on e4. Hikaru takes the pawn, gh4. And Magnus calculating here. He has 3 minutes on the clock. And after 30 seconds just, he takes the pawn on a2. Insane rook sacrifice. Knight e3 attacking the rook now. And maybe threatening some queen c6 check stuff. But the position still remains even if Hikaru defends this well. Rook e1 seems like a good move. He plays it. And now with queen c6, just king b1 seems like the right move. It looks very dangerous because knight jumps back, threatening a fork. But you can defend it here. You can defend this position with queen c2. But instead Hikaru goes rook c2. Oof, he gives back the exchange. And that is not a good idea. Magnus Carlsen, of course, if you trade queens, I think Hikaru is more than happy in this endgame. He knows he has excellent drawing chances by getting his king up. So for Magnus, the idea is not to trade queens. But how does he continue here? He's thinking about this moment. If not queen trade, where to move the queen? Maybe queen d5 with the idea of rook e6, rook c6. These major piece positions are very tricky. He takes another pawn. Hikaru is like, from being a pawn down, I'm a pawn up. Attacking here. And let's see, Magnus can bring the rook. He can even take this pawn, queen d4. Queen g5 check is also possible. He takes on g5 with a check, king b2. Hikaru has 1 minute 24 seconds. 2 minutes 10 seconds for Magnus. Even material on the board. And now Magnus thinking here hard. Maybe queen d5 back, just centralizing the queen could be an idea, but Magnus seems to be tempted to push the pawn forward. Yes, he pushes the pawn to e3. Queen comes up to d3. It's a question as to who's happy with this position. I'm sure Magnus realizes he's better because his king is safer. But is Hikaru happy that he's survived for so long? By the way, another amazing move. If rook takes e3, there is queen f2 check and you win this. So that's a great move here by Magnus. Hikaru brings his king to c2. Rook comes up to e6. Do you see how tricky these endgames are with just major pieces? They have the facets of not just endgame play where you are pushing your pawns, trying to make queens, but they also have the facets of middle game where you are trying to checkmate your opponent's king. So queen f1 played here. Again, can't take the pawn, there's a check and you lose the rook. pawn push to d5. And he goes rook a6. You can see there Hikaru shaking his head. He's like, I can now win the pawn, but is his king going to survive the attack? Of course, Magnus can't calculate everything. Look at that. Hikaru is like, can Magnus checkmate me? Rook a2 check, king c3 played. Queen c1 check. The king is being made to run. King b4. And now Magnus thinking here, there is a check on a3, but he goes b6 with the threat of queen c5 mate. It's a mate in one threatened here. Not at all easy to handle it. He goes queen d4. Where's the checkmate? Not at all easy. And Magnus has to figure it in 1 minute 34 seconds. He gives a check. Well, Hikaru can go forward. That looks super risky. He can come back. That also doesn't look safe. He comes back king c3. There's no mate. If check, maybe king c4. He gives a check. King goes back, check. King c3. Magnus cannot find a mate and he's running low on time. Hikaru has 32 seconds. Magnus has 47. What a move by Magnus. King b7. It's moves like these that are so difficult to meet. Now, what does white do? He plays queen c4, which is a good move. Check on b2, check on c1. I'm not so sure. He goes queen c1. King will go back to b4 or d4. Oh, he goes to d4. What the hell? King is moving ahead. Rook c2, stopping queen c6 check. He goes queen a4 now. Do you have a check here? He'll block, but then another check on f4. That seems like the plan. Queen d2. Yes, he plays it. King has to go up to e4. Oh, the king has been running. The king has been running, but I think Magnus is circling him down. King d4. Where's the mate? Magnus is getting a bit fidgety there. He knows that Hikaru's king is in trouble. He gives a check, another check. And Hikaru now has to move his king. King c3 maybe. Yeah, he goes king c3 and rook d5. Another fine move by Magnus Carlsen. He plays rook d5. There's a check now and Hikaru shaking his head because now it's a mate. Because king d4 he's finally managed. Magnus has managed to hunt down the king. Queen d5 check. But then king goes to e3. Maybe check here again. He gives a check. King e3. Check again. King d2 and queen e2 check. If king comes up, he has a check here. This is winning. Hikaru is unhappy. King c3. There are many ways to win, but rook c5 does the trick because this is a checkmate. What a game by Magnus Carlsen there. He's setting back the pieces. What I absolutely loved is how Magnus attacked the white king with just a rook and a queen. And Magnus is like, I just don't remember how the pieces were. This is the thing that Magnus likes to do in freestyle chess. He likes to put back the pieces on the squares that they were. And yeah, that just shows that he is taking this game in its entirety, in all ways possible, even setting back the pieces in freestyle format. But the games between Magnus and Hikaru are always so exciting, and I hope that you enjoyed it. This was a great win for Magnus.